Welcome to the God Culture, where we urge you to challenge tradition as 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. We do not intend to be confrontational, although we will defend ourselves and our positions in comments, but to compare what the Bible really says versus the traditions of men, which Jesus himself rebuked. Jesus said to the Pharisees, "Full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition." Mark 7:9. Today we will further explore the location of the Garden of Eden, narrowing down our theory on the shape of the garden and the location of the Mount of the East, yes, by name. And this one will likely surprise you, but wow, does it fit so well. First, we want to thank everyone for your comments, emails, Facebook posts, and shares, and messenger messages, etc. This has been quite an undertaking for us, but your encouragement is an overwhelming blessing to us. We want to take a few minutes to share some of the revelations that have come from our viewers in response to just the last Garden of Eden video alone. These are amazing and well thought out. People are researching this out and proving this further, and that's awesome. This is why we do what we do. We don't make this about us and building our reputations or an organization, but because it's about this special land of creation and the Garden of Eden rising in the last days to fulfill Yahushua's, Jesus's prophecy. Yes, we get attacked, and soon we'll tell you about a really large one that is settling at the moment, but those just don't matter in the face of knowing the location of Yahuwah's holy places on earth, where he dwells, his holy of holies, the Garden of Eden, as well as a special people having their history restored and seeing the very prophecy, not from us being prophets and prophesying over this nation, but Yahushua, Jesus himself, and Isaiah, and actually there's even more, and we'll be back on that soon. First, remember we covered that cinnamon was in fact native to the Philippines, even though Wikipedia doesn't seem to know it, as well as any other source we can find online, really. Specifically, Cebu cinnamon. Well, this viewer who wishes to remain anonymous sent us this photo of a sign at the base of Mount Manungao, home of the world's most threatened tree, Cebu cinnamon, only in Cebu and nowhere else in the world. Kaningag. That's cool. Thank you for this. And another point we mentioned in part 10 regarding the Philippines being the center of marine biodiversity. But we had this viewer send in this video, which will play a short portion of an interview with a scientist, which is very appropriate.
My name is Robert Suntay. I'm the president of CVIP Institute. We are a foundation in the Philippines that does science, education, and advocacy to protect the Verde Island Passage. Many people, of course, know about the Coral Triangle, but the Coral Triangle is kind of like the dartboard. The more focused area is the Sulu-Sulawesi seascape, and in there is the center of the center, which is the Verde Island Passage.
According to Conservation International, the Philippines' marine habitats, especially those within the Sulu-Sulawesi seascape, that's a lot of S's, alliteration, a great expanse of biodiversity located between Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, most in the Philippines, of course, are within the core of the world's marine biodiversity, surpassing even Australia's Great Barrier Reef. How about that? In addition, a study by Carpenter and Springer in 2005 identified the Verde Island Passage as an area having the highest concentration of marine shorefish biodiversity on the planet. Wow. Do you realize what this means? This is no small find. Think about it. Mankind and land animals started over after the flood. This is why it is so difficult to find the origin of man. And there are so many theories out there based on finding bones. But we can always find older bones tomorrow. And every time that happens, it changes everything, because there is no compass by which to make decisions. However, there is a simple way to view history before the flood and gauge where mankind began, and that is marine biodiversity. Why? Because though land creatures were wiped out, sea life was not. Therefore, simple logic tells us that wherever the most diverse amount of sea life exists, that is most likely the location of man's origin. And guess what? The area to the left in the circle, or really surrounded by the yellow highlight, is the center of marine biodiversity in all of Earth. To the right, our Garden of Eden map from Noah and Enoch's directions, as well as Genesis. So the land above the garden is the land of origin of sea life and all life on Earth, not Africa or Babylon, nor even Israel. This is scientific evidence that the garden and Havilah, where Adam and Eve lived, are located. Why? Because science is based on observation and experiment. And finding bones doesn't fit that. Yes, it's observation, but to think that, oh, hey, I found a bone. Well, that doesn't tell you anything other than, is it older than others? Maybe, but is it the oldest? Could we dig up something else later, especially if this whole strata theory was actually true, and it's not. But if it was, then that would mean we need to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and who knows how deep we would need to get to the oldest people on Earth. Just no one ever really looks at it that way. And here's another. To the left is a rendering of one of the cherubim on top of the Ark of the Covenant, according to the Temple Institute. One of our viewers pointed out that cherub's shape can be found in the shape of Mindanao to the right. Imagine him flexing his wing forward, curling his body to do so, and we can see exactly what they are saying. Another viewer sent us a well-written article about how two cherubim guard the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle and the temple in Israel. But it ties together that two cherubim, again, the I am on the end, means more than one, so probably two, guard Yahuah God's Holy of Holies on earth, the Garden of Eden, in the eastern entrance, the eastern corridor. The article further ties, and this was just fascinating, so we thought we'd mention it, the two white-robed angels at the tomb of Yahushua's, Jesus' resurrection, one at his head and one at his feet. Of course, his body wasn't there at that point, as two cherubim as well. That's in John 20:12 if you want to look it up. It makes sense. Another viewer sent us this poem from Jose Rizal. My Last Farewell, written on the eve of his execution in 1896. We show it in its original form in Spanish as well as in English and Tagalog. Of course, we'll read it in English because that's all we really know. Farewell, my adored land, region of the sun caressed. Imagine that. There we go with the sun reference again. Pearl of the Orient Sea, our Eden lost. With gladness I give you my life, sad and repressed. And were it more brilliant, more fresh, and at its best, I would still give it to you for your welfare at most. So not only is bdellium, pearl, found in the Philippines, and the most significant in size, but the land is even called the Pearl of the Orient. Sounds like Havilah to me. Could it be? Of course it is. Our Eden lost. So Rizal knew that the Philippines was Ophir, which we covered before, according to his writings, and he also knew it was the Garden of Eden. Yeah, this could be a reference that anyone could make to any country, their Eden, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's possible. However, we think this actually could be very telling because this man knew something. And by the way, who lost Eden, though? Actually, Adam did. Fascinating. And Wavemaker found this scripture, which is very appropriate, from 2 Enoch 30, verse 1. On the third day I commanded the earth to make grow great, and fruitful trees and hills, and seed to sow, and I planted paradise. What's paradise? The Garden of Eden, and enclosed it. Ooh, wow. There's actually a scripture that says that. Imagine that. And placed as armed guardians flaming angels, and thus I created renewal. Remember, we covered the Hebrew word for garden used in Genesis, and it means enclosed garden, enclosure and garden. This confirms this in Enoch. Neat. Thank you, Wavemaker. And this is why Yahuah God only placed cherubim on the east of the garden, because it is enclosed with one entrance on the east side, which is also why Adam exited to the east, because north, south, and west are not options. And Vira, hope we got your name right, sent us this map in which we'll show you her point. First, this is a map of the ocean floor similar to the other we showed, but with more detail. Notice the river from Eden, mid-ocean ridge, flowing into the Pisan River, which travels up the coast of the U.S. to Alaska, to Russia, down to Japan, and look how it splits there and goes to the east to Marianas Trench and to the west down to Taiwan. And then it splits again, surrounding the Philippines on the east, the Philippine Trench, and on the west in the South China Sea. As we said, it really does surround the whole land of Havilah. And here's a close-up of just the Philippines. And Vira pointed out that there are clearly channels still evident from the ocean floor. Again, as we said in part 10, flood sediment has filled in some trenches, even according to science. Thank you, Vira. And after viewing our last video, El Bethel Church in South Cotabato sent in this map they created, which is awesome. Sometimes some of our viewers get discouraged when they share this message to a friend or relative and they are not ready to receive it. However, know that there are even whole churches researching this now for themselves, as well as rabbis, pastors, evangelists, and even a seminary sharing especially the river from Eden, Ophir, Garden of Eden geography that has become evident in the search for Solomon's gold. not because we want to know where the gold is, nor the money, but because we want to see Yahuah God's word restored. And we can and must all do this. Know Yahuah God and His word for ourselves above all. So quick review, here is the map that we ended with on the last video. We are going to further define the shape and boundaries of the Garden of Eden, and we are going to offer our theory as to the Mount of the East location, which will likely surprise you. Remember, these are the directions of Noah from the book of Jubilees. We've taken a lot of hits for using a book not in the canon, but have you seen anything from Jubilees yet that appears to go against the Bible? No. It tracks along with Genesis pretty closely, giving us more detail. We are not searching for spiritual doctrine here. Not in this case. We are searching for geography, and any historical text that sheds light will be used, even occult stories, though we will heavily scrutinize them especially. Noah tells us the garden is on Shem's eastern border, and we will explain this further today as well. To the right of Ham, which we'll deal with too, north of the mountains of fire, which are literally the name of Ganung, Apai, I said it wrong, I know, the name for all of the 147 volcanoes of just Indonesia alone. And this is the Philippines. Also, our River from Eden theory from Part 10, which continues to become further proven, supports that the Pisan River surrounds ancient Havilah, which is the location of the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. In the last video, we covered tons of possible residual Hebrew and Greek references which remain in the Philippines around the area of the Garden of Eden. Oh, that's not all. If you haven't seen Part 7, there's a bunch more there. And especially in researching the Mount of the East, we have uncovered much more, which we will not get into in this video, but we will show the Hebrew references in what we believe is the Mount of the East, and this will blow you away, especially the Hebrew portion. Again, finding the area of the Garden of Eden is no theory. It is fact based on Noah's directions from the book of Jubilees matched to Genesis and Enoch's directions from the book of Enoch matched to Genesis as well. That is no guess whatsoever. However, when we get to the location of the Mount of the East, this is our theory, and even if we are wrong, and we will offer compelling evidence, it does not change the fact that the Garden of Eden is exactly where Enoch and Noah said it was, the Philippines. And let us not forget the very definition of the Hebrew word pili and pinas, evident in the Filipino name of this country, miraculous or secret cornerstone. And we further proved that Joktan and Sons were headed to Mount Safar, also known as Qatar, the Mount of the East, the fourth holy place of Yahuah God, which begins inside the Garden of Eden, below the ocean floor of the Sulu Sea, as Enoch sacrificed on the Mount of the East while in the garden, and it protrudes out of the top of the garden as Adam walked the mountains above the garden after his exile and made the first sacrifice of atonement on the top of the Mount of the East, meaning it's both inside and outside of the garden. Enoch tells the river from Eden system, the Pisan River, which has the expressed purpose of watering the garden, according to Genesis, enters by splitting into 2 streams, which then split into 4 parts, entering the garden and circle the garden. Again, it does not have to be a perfect circle as we have drawn. Finally, Genesis tells us, as well as Jubilees, that Adam headed east after the Garden of Eden, meaning the mountain of the east from which he sacrificed above the garden must begin in the garden on its eastern border, which above the ocean floor and at today's sea level must be east of the garden. Otherwise, how can it be in the garden and east at the same time, right? The base begins in the garden and goes into the ceiling of the garden, which ends its garden territory. And when it comes up, it comes to a point east of the point in which it leaves the garden. This makes sense. So the Mount of the East is somewhere in the Visayan, Mindanao region. Before we identify the Mount of the East, however, we would like to explore an ancient legend which brings to light this whole account. In the legend of Bringin city in Samar, a mythical city mentioned by superstitious townfolk of the province of Samar, where it is said the metropolis-like city exists and hidden from plain sight, invisible. It's the embodiment of the ideal city, except that the tall buildings, towers, and spires are all made of jet black materials. It is also said that the streets and highways are also black, as well as the cars and vehicles running through it are completely made of black materials. Even the food is black. There are also reports of strange disappearances around the suspected area of Bringin city. Many missing person cases have sprung up through the years, which gave the region a sinister reputation. The victims range from farmers, fishermen, delivery crews, bus drivers, along with their passengers, lost travelers, and in some cases, businessmen and investors lured into the city by business deals and transactions, but were never seen again. Should play some funny music there. Bringin city said to be south of Caterman municipality in northern Samar. We know there are multiple accounts of this story, and some pinpoint it in northern Samar, and some pinpoint it between Samar and Leyte. However, let's remember, no one actually knows where Bringin is. And there's a reason. They just know something happened in ancient times, and further stories have blossomed and added to detail from that, including encantos being present. No encantos are present in the Garden of Eden, and they cannot get past the 2 cherubim either, so they're not taking people there either. But what does this story sound like? Ancient myths are usually, at least many times, based on something. Was there an ancient event that took place near this area, which is supported by a major event which actually did happen, which fits the root narrative as well? We believe so. We believe this is a retelling of one of the most ancient of stories, in which Enoch was taken, not by encantos, but by angels, and he just disappeared. Genesis 5:24. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This root of the Bringin city legend, which has been expanded and embellished over the years, is, we believe, the story of the greatest prophet of the Old Testament, Enoch, who just disappeared one day. He was taken by angels. Notice he walked with God, but that does not say he went to heaven or walked to heaven, as we are told in Sunday school. We know, we taught that curriculum for years. God took him where? We know he went to the Garden of Eden from the book of Jubilees. But is there more to this? What about the very name Bringin? Does it have roots in ancient Hebrew, perhaps? We believe so. Biri is a direct Hebrew word meaning creative one. Who could that be? Gan is the Hebrew word used in Genesis for garden, in the Garden of Eden. And it means an enclosure garden, enclosed garden, just as Wavemaker pointed out in 2 Enoch 30, verse 1, which we shared earlier. And the N, or Hebrew letter Nun, means continue, offspring, heir. So this could actually have its roots in the story and the word used in ancient Hebrew. So, enclosed garden of the heir of the creative one. Wow. We will never look at that legend the same. It's not a ghost story. It's actually based on a true event. Cool. So what else did Enoch have to say about the Garden of Eden? This is Enoch's journey in which the angels took him around the earth. He starts with Mount Zion, which we covered is the North Pole. See 12a for proof. Then he goes to the mountain of the wilderness. What wilderness? Mount Sinai. So where do you think he is headed next? Well, to the third and fourth holy places of Yahuah God on earth, of course. You bet. Remember, too, this journey takes place before the flood. We pick up there. And I went to another place, away from the wilderness, Mount Sinai. I came near the east of this mountain. What mountain? The Mount of the East, of course. And there I saw trees of judgment. Where are they? They're in the Garden of Eden. It's the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, according to Genesis. Especially vessels of the fragrance of incense and myrrh. Notice the word's just incense, not frankincense, but just saying. But myrrh is spelled out, so okay, fine. Is he in Saudi Arabia? Yemen? Ethiopia? No. He's near the Garden of Eden, where these trees actually grow. And the trees were not alike, probably meaning the two trees of judgment. And above it, above these, the two trees of the garden, above the mountains of the east. Notice he keeps going up as if he was down, but okay. And not far away, I saw another place, valleys of water. Wait a minute. How can there be valleys above the Garden of Eden? Because he went up and up. Remember, this was before the flood, because the garden is below those as well. Like that which does not fail. And I saw a beautiful tree, and its fragrance was like that of the mastic. And by the banks of these valleys I saw fragrant cinnamon. Did Enoch now go back to Sri Lanka to get cinnamon? No. These trees are by the garden. And we know cinnamon is there because Adam brought cinnamon and other spices from the garden and planted them there. Is Enoch looking at Cebu at this point in the story? Likely. Are they the Cebu cinnamon trees? Very well could be. Let's pick it up. And beyond those valleys, I came towards the east. So we have the valleys of water, the four streams which flow out of the two springs, which flows from the Pison River, which is part of the river from Eden system, which serves the purpose of watering the garden. Where are these valleys of water or streams? They're east of the garden, just as our map shows. And I saw another mountain on which there were trees, and there flowed out water, and there flowed out from it, as it were, a nectar whose name is styrax and galbanum. Wait, did Enoch now translate to the Middle East and Iran at the same time as being in the Far East? No. As we have already proven, those spices originate from the area around the Garden of Eden, and likely the garden itself. And beyond this mountain I saw another mountain, and on it there were aloe trees. Is Enoch now in Ethiopia? Because if aloe is only originally from there, he would have to be, or is that another lie of history we have proven? Yeah. And those trees were full of fruit, which is like an almond, and is hard. Stop! Wait, what did Enoch say? Fruit, which is like an almond, hard? What is he talking about? Enoch is referring, you know this, to the pili tree and the pili nut, which is like an almond and hard. And when they take this fruit, it is better than any fragrance. What is considered the best fragrance? The pili tree has resin, which is likened unto frankincense and myrrh, which is because it is. Are you getting this? In Enoch's journey, he describes a pili tree. Impossible. But this fits. And after these fragrances to the north, as I looked over the mountains, I saw 7 mountains full of fine nard. Oh, now Enoch must be in India, right? Nope. And fragrant trees of cinnamon and pepper. Could this be the other cinnamon, the one on Luzon to the north? Probably. And from there, I went over the summits of those mountains far away to the east, and I went over the Red Sea. Now wait, the Red Sea in ancient times was a name for the entire Indian Ocean. Again, remember, this is before the flood, but Enoch was alive in both times and wrote Red Sea to the reader so they would understand. And I was far from it, far from the Indian Ocean. Remember, Enoch is high above the mountain summits at this point. And I went over the angel Zoitiel. Who? Just who is this angel? Well, we cannot find a reference anywhere else, but we know by the location who he is. Zoitiel is the name of a guardian cherub of the Garden of Eden. How do we know? Just read the next line. And I came to the Garden of Righteousness. What's that? The Garden of Eden, which Enoch called in the last scripture we shared in the last video as incorruptible versus the rest of the earth, which is corruptible. And I saw beyond those trees many large trees growing there, sweet-smelling, large, and very beautiful and glorious, the trees of wisdom, from which they eat and know great wisdom. And it is like the carob tree, and its fruit is like bunches of grapes on a vine. Very beautiful, and the smell of this tree spreads and penetrates afar. This is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is a physical tree, not a metaphor, and it has the appearance of a carob tree, but its fruit is different, like bunches of grapes, but growing on a tree, remember. What tree could this be? Let's see if we can figure this out. Let's go through the scripture one more time. And I came to the Garden of Righteousness, incorruptible Eden, and I saw beyond those trees many large trees growing there, sweet-smelling, large, very beautiful, and glorious. The trees of wisdom, from which they eat and know great wisdom, and it is like the carob tree. Stop. Look to the right on your screen. This is a carob tree, basically from the greater Middle East, the Mediterranean Sea, including North Africa to Iran, basically, is where it grows. Enoch used this for comparison because he knew the readers in the future, Israel, would be stuck, of course, in a Middle Eastern mindset to a degree. He already knew what Lanzones were because he was from Havilah. Now, look to the left and compare the bark of the Lanzones tree with the carob tree to the right. Look at the structure. Look at the leaves of both trees. They are, in fact, similar. And the Lanzones tree can grow up to 98 feet tall, so they could certainly classify as large trees. Prior to the flood, perhaps they could have grown even larger because the entire ecosystem was different, and we'll prove that back in the flood series later. Keep reading. And its fruit is like bunches of grapes on a vine. But this is on a tree, right? Very beautiful. Dude, does the Lanzones fruit not look like bunches of grapes? Remember, he is describing a tree, not a vine, and he is making a comparison using the word like. This is most likely Lanzones, and we will tie this in further later in the video. And the smell of this tree spreads and penetrates afar. Yes, Lanzones have a nice aroma as well. Now, what is Enoch describing here? Is it the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? It appears so, and the further passage will say yes. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil appears to be Lanzones or similar. Also, Lanzones are in the garden. And if you have ever eaten this fruit, if you were Adam, you would have certainly taken this tree with you from the garden, especially to eat. But that's not all this tree is good for, and we'll cover this further later. However, there is only one tree which gives the kind of knowledge that causes one to fall. It's locked away in the Garden of Eden. Thank Yahuah God, because I love Lanzones. If you haven't tried it, we know, probably all Filipinos have, but it is one of the best fruits on earth. It is described in taste as a grape with a hint of grapefruit. Not a bad one either. We will come back to this, but keep reading. Are we sure this is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? And I said, this tree is beautiful. How beautiful and pleasing is its appearance. And the holy angel Raphael, the archangel, who was with me, answered me and said to me, this is the tree of wisdom. Note, this is the one tree, not trees now at this point. So it's safe to eat Lanzones. Don't worry. From which your ancient father and ancient mother, Adam and Eve, who were before you, ate and learnt wisdom, and their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they were driven from the garden. So it is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yes, and it does appear that that is a Lanzone tree. Again, on its own, without the rest we have covered, it would be very hard to see where Enoch is in this description. The pili tree is the only giveaway in directions, and unless you knew you were near the Philippines or the Southeast Pacific where the pili tree grows, you really would probably have a hard time even making that connection. However, when we already know the location of the Garden of Eden, and we do, we now see these directions make perfect sense and further confirm our findings. However, though no one has mentioned this yet, there are a couple of challenges we have to our own findings thus far. See, we also ask the big questions along the way. Check this out, though. First challenge. If the garden is below the Sulu Sea, wouldn't volcanoes pose a real challenge to this? All that lava and all? Answer, no. Let's move on. Nah, kidding. To the right is a map of all the volcanoes in the Philippines. Notice there are none in the area of the Garden of Eden that we have drawn out thus far. We superimposed that map onto our map, and you can see the volcanoes do not present a challenge at this point. But what about oil? Is that a challenge? They found oil in the Sulu Sea, right? To the right is a map of the areas in which there is oil present, under the sea and land in the Philippines. Mostly, this does not present an issue. Oh man, look what it did to our perfect circle. Notice the northwestern portion of the circle we drew? This is why we said the shape was not final as a perfect circle. So let's use this to redraw the borders of the garden some. Because if there is oil several miles down, and it appears there is, the garden must end before that. Notice this is a lot of oil, as the Philippines once again is very abundant in resources. Also, not right under Davao, because there is oil, meaning the garden is not under there. So the guy down there making claims, not so much. So the garden shape is likely more like this. Again, this portion is our theory, as we have not found scriptural support for an exact shape necessarily. We are just using logic to say the garden boundary must end before the pockets of oil, which has been discovered. But now is where it gets really interesting. Notice we redrew the streams a little and extended the garden further on the northern side of Mindanao. Why would we do such a thing? Because we have searched mountains all over the Philippines, defining those which have Hebrew or Greek origins, and taking a close look at those definitions in search of the mountain of the east. Let's quickly review the Mount of the East clues we have thus far. We know it is the fourth holy place of Yahuah God on earth, and Enoch sacrificed to Yahuah God once he went into the Garden of Eden. So it is accessible from inside the Garden of Eden. We found clues. Remember, Rabbi Cohen Halohawi reveals the name of the Mount of the East as Mount Qatar. This is a reference to Enoch sacrificing, offering incense on the Mount of the East while inside the Garden of Eden, after the angels carried him there. And we know Adam sacrificed on the top side of the Mount of the East, Mount Qatar, after he left the garden, meaning the mountain's base is actually below the seafloor, beginning in the Garden of Eden, and it protrudes out of the sea. This is an interesting scenario because Adam went east of the garden, yet sacrificed on this Mount of the East, which is in the garden. How could this be? We believe it must be located on the eastern border within the Garden of Eden. And yes, we will explain how Ham's territory begins just to the right of it, by the way. And then Adam accessed the top of it, which is further to the east because it forms a triangle as the base comes up through the ocean floor and through even the sea level. We then connected as a direct reference to the tree of life, Keter Qatar, after which we also connected the word Safar, Mount of the East, from Genesis 10 to the same tree of life with Qatar, Katir, representing the very tip of it outside of the garden. You mean where Adam sacrificed? Yes. Safar is the reference to the whole mountain and the tree of life, and Qatar is the name of the tip, which is named such because Adam sacrificed there, because Qatar means offering of incense. Ophir, Sheba, and Tarshish from Genesis 10 were headed to Safar, Qatar, and the land right next to the Garden of Eden. So let us show you what we found, and it is very significant. On the eastern border, which we have drawn of the garden, there is a small standalone island just north of Mindanao. It's called, forgive my pronunciation, Camiguin Island, not to be confused with another island by the same name all the way north of Luzon in the Babuyan Islands, which have extreme significance, but not in this video. Notice the different province names on the map to the right. The name Camiguin is derived from the native word camagong, a species of the ebony tree that thrives near Lake Mainit in the province of Surigao del Norte, the region from which the earlier inhabitants of the islands, the Manobos, came. Perhaps. Kinamigin, the local language of Camiguin, is closely related to the Manobo language. Makes sense. An earlier Spanish geography book writes the island as Camiguang. There is reason to support the Spaniards dropped the final G. Today it is rendered as Camiguin. By the way, look up ebony tree on Google and you will find there is no reference to the Philippines having ebony trees whatsoever. So there are no ebony trees in the Philippines. We know you were looking at one pictured on your screen, but actually it's a figment of your imagination because they can't grow there. They can only grow in Africa and India, right? Wrong. However, we cannot find any application for any resin that specifically comes from this tree, though Adam not only brought trees for incense from the garden, but also some fruit trees as well. Perhaps this is one. Why would we make such a connection, though? Let's look at the word of origin for Camiguin, Camagong. This is interesting indeed. The Hebrew word cam means he, it, gets up. Does that seem to tie to a former abode in the garden, which is down below? Or is it a reference to Adam's losing the battle, but he gets up because the mountain where he atoned is there? Oh, there's more. Kamia in Kabbalah, which we will expose soon in another video, actually means center of energy. You mean like Yahuah God's presence in the Holy of Holies just underneath, and especially at the Mount of the East? Is there any energy greater than that? Not at all. Agon is a Greek word. Yes, we are mixing in Greek in this word, and if that bothers you, ignore this one, but wait till we get to the next words because they are much more direct Hebrew. It means a gathering, contest, or struggle. A masculine noun, and the root of the English words agony, agonize. Properly, a contest, struggle, a grueling conflict, fight, figuratively, positive struggle that goes with fighting the good fight of faith from 1 Timothy 6:12. Would this not fit the agony in which Adam felt, the grueling conflict he experienced fighting the good fight of faith, choosing to repent and atone for his sin? To us, this is too much to be a coincidence. And the final letter G, or Gimel in Hebrew, what about that? Gimel is a picture of Yahushua, Jesus, as our Redeemer, John 4:42. It also means to lift up. Could also be a picture of the Holy Spirit, whose role is to convict of sin, righteousness, and judgment to come, John 16:8. No, none of these things go together, right? And thousands of years of time have passed, but it just must be a mere coincidence that these words may actually be a part of this story. Put this together and you get, man has fallen and struggles, but will rise and be redeemed by Messiah. Okay, this one seems a bit speculative, we agree, but we cannot ignore such a compelling possibility, especially not when we found what is on this island, which is directly due east of the Garden of Eden. We are theorizing, though, at this point. There just so happens to be 7 volcanoes on this little island, which is rather odd. However, the name of this one, this is the key. Mount Hibik. Ever heard of it? On the surface, it appears to be just another mountain. Though the tallest one on the island, it is not amongst the tallest in the region necessarily. So why this one? Well, the name, Hibuk, is a straight Hebrew word with practically the exact spelling. It is spelled, however, with an exclamation point on the end, which is of further interest to us. It is an imperative, meaning, to a man, you mean Adam? Yep. Be embarrassed! Exclamation point. Was Adam embarrassed by his sin? Was he very embarrassed? Embarrassed enough to say it twice? Hibik. Do you think he knew the ramifications not only for him, but for all of mankind, for his sin? Adam had been eating from the tree of life for years prior to this in the garden. He knew exactly. He lost a chess match in which Eve was tricked into eating the fruit, and he had to decide to join her in a corrupt state or lose her forever. We believe this is a love story from that viewpoint, and Adam's choice was Eve over Yahuah God, perhaps the root of stories like Romeo and Juliet. However, Adam was wrong to put Yahuah God second, and he knew he would suffer the consequences. No, this was not Eve's fault. It was Adam's ultimately, because it was his choice, and he is the one who received the commandment not to eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of. Some are thinking, well, that's compelling, but maybe there's another mountain in the Philippines that ties even better. One of the reasons this video took us so long is that we actually looked at all of the significant mountains we could find in the Philippines. And for us, this is the closest fit, but not just simply because of this definition alone, although it ties perfectly. Remember Rabbi Cohen Halalevi's definition of the Mount of the East, where Enoch sacrificed within the garden, yet Adam sacrificed on top of it above the incorruptible garden, in the corruptible world, atoning for his sin at the fall? Mount Qatar. But Hibik isn't Qatar, though. Or is it? Remember the map we showed earlier has Hibik located in the region known as Qatar Man? On Camiguin Island, not to be confused with the municipality of Caterman in northern Samar, where the Bringin legend says Bringin is south of there. Coincidence? We think not. Camiguin Island is in fact south of there. However, in history and especially internationally, Hibik is known as Mount Caterman or Caterman Volcano. On your screen are 7 sources, and we saw many more, even articles from Time magazine, etc., which equate the two. In fact, some just call it Mount Caterman, referring to the eruption of Hibik because they are the same. But why is this important? The word Caterman sounds familiar. Didn't we just cover again the Rabbi Cohen Hallelevi revealed the name of the Mount of the East as Qatar? With a Q, of course. But here it is. Qatar with a C equates to the same word in Hebrew with a Q, meaning to make smoke sacrifices, incense. And the word man could also be Hebrew man, M-A-A-N, meaning purpose or intent. So Adam's purpose was to atone for his sin with incense offerings, can be gleaned from these definitions. Wow. Mount Qatar or Caterman. But that's not all that supports this. No. The Camiguin province is famous for its sweet lanzones and its annual Lanzones festival. Does that sound familiar? Some viewers may not be familiar with this fruit and tree, and man, you are missing out. Lancium parasiticum was originally native to Southeast Asia. Agriculturally, the tree is grown throughout the entire Southeast Asian region, ranging from southern India to the Philippines for its fruit. In the Philippines, where it is locally referred to as the lanzones or langsa, the plant is grown mostly on the southern parts of the island of Luzon, especially in Paete, Laguna, due to the species' narrow range of conditions favorable for its survival. It is also found in abundance on northern Mindanao, particularly in places as Butuan, Cagayan de Oro, and Camiguin. The Camiguin variety is especially sweet and succulent. Wait, so there is a special Lanzones tree specific to Camiguin Island, which is sweeter and juicier. Cool. And is this not the same tree we read earlier that Enoch is referring to? We believe so. Camiguin is famous for a special Lanzones. Wow. But the next part is even more telling. L. parasiticum is cultivated mainly for its fruit, which can be eaten raw. The fruit can also be bottled in syrup. The wood is hard, thick, heavy, and resilient, allowing it to be used in the construction of rural houses. Some parts of the plant are used in making traditional medicine. The bitter seeds can be pounded and mixed with water to make deworming and ulcer medication. The bark is used to treat dysentery and malaria. The powdered bark can also be used to treat scorpion stings. The fruit's skin is used to treat diarrhea. And in the Philippines, the dried skin is burned as a mosquito repellent. Incense. The skin, especially of the langsat variety, can be dried and burned as incense. Its resin is thick and milk-colored. You mean it's white? Yes. And in French, that would be the word franc. And the incense, which comes from it, would be called white incense, frankincense. But that can only grow in Ethiopia, right? Just one specific tree, which could not possibly be anything else. We proved before that is baloney. We covered that the Greek word Libanos, which also comes from the root Hebrew word Labona, which is also used in the Old Testament, translated as frankincense, but usually just incense. Could this actually be the incense Adam harvested from the very skirts of the Mount of the East? We believe so. And not only that the dried skin of the fruit can also be used for incense. And look at all the many uses of this tree for medicine and even its wood. This is a miracle tree, not just for fruit, lang. In Tagalog, it's known as lanzones or bua-bua. Does that have a meaning that ties? Could bua-bua originate from the Hebrew word shabua for a period of 7, whose root word is Sheba? And notice the variants, by the way. We didn't show you this before, but notice Cebu is the root of these, and Cebu was originally spelled not with a C, but with an S, and even with an SH. Wow. This is also the root word for Shabbath, Shabbat, Sabbath, to cease or to rest, which originates from Shabbat and Shabua. So the 7th day of rest that Yahuah God established the day after he created man was observed by Adam in Havilah, known then as Elda, the land of creation, the very first Sabbath. Because Adam was there, having just been created the day before, and the garden would not be created till the next day. He likely already knew the Mount of the East from above, and may well have already worshipped there the very first day, which is why it is established as one of the 4 holy places of Yahuah God on earth. Yahuah is more about sediment than necessarily quality when it comes to his sacrifices. The biblical spices, as we proved, originate from the Garden of Eden and ancient Havilah. There is no such thing as a spice that originates outside of there that he wanted used for his sacrifices. The only way to restore these ancient incenses is to explore the Philippines, land of creation, and the Garden of Eden. You will find them there, not a tree that is only found in places like Ethiopia. Impossible. Doesn't fit at all. In fact, could this tie perhaps be a reference to Adam creating the first double Shabbat or double Sabbath, where he observed 2 Sabbaths in the same week to atone for his sin after leaving the garden? In fact, is it possible that there's even a feast of Yahuah that falls on that very day? We don't know. We're just speculating on that. Is that why the word is used twice? Bua, bua. And its tie to that being possibly 2 of the spices Adam used to sacrifice. Could be. Also, notice the connection that Sheba was basically modern Visayas, and Camiguin in its history used to be associated with that area rather than Mindanao. Does the word Visayas have a meaning in Hebrew? People from Visayas, or really originally spelled with a B, call themselves B'sayens. By in Hebrew means I pray, and sayan in Hebrew means assistant, helper, or agent. An agent of prayer. Oh yeah. Would Adam qualify as that first agent of prayer? Of course he would. Jubilees 3:26, and on that day on which Adam went forth from the garden, he offered as a sweet savor an offering frankincense, galbanum, and stacked and spices in the morning with the rising of the sun from the day when he covered his shame. See, frankincense, white incense, lanzones. But that's not the only tie here. What is an island anyway? In Adam's day before the flood, islands were mountains. The entire island of Camiguin is the Mount of the East. Yes, Hibik, Caterman, is its highest point where Adam sacrificed, but it is only one summit of the entire Mount of the East, whose base begins in the Garden of Eden and goes up to the ceiling of the enclosed garden, and then the mountain continues from the ocean floor all the way up above sea level to the plateau of Camiguin, now an island, and then its summits rise even higher from there. This means Adam living on the mountain, according to the Cave of Treasures we shared in the last video, really refers to a cave somewhere on Camiguin Island, not necessarily Hibik. Specifically, though, it could be. Let's look at the other mountains on the island for a minute. Why? Because though Hibik Caterman is the tallest and most noted, we actually believe the entire Mount of the East is not just one mountain on Camiguin Island. Just southeast of Hibik is another volcano by the name Gens Laban. Wait a minute. That seems oddly familiar. Is this the word for Gens, possessive meaning Camiguins, Laban, or in Greek Labanos or Hebrew Labona, which is incense, sometimes frankincense or white incense? Very well could be. So there's another mountain on the island which may actually bear the name for the incense used by Adam, which would have been the same in which the Queen of Sheba brought to Solomon and the wise kings brought to the toddler Yahushua Jesus. The same that Solomon would have sought out for the temple as well. Thus, the trip to Ophir, not just for gold. Another mountain on Camiguin Island is named Mount Vulcan, which is the Greek god of fire. By the way, one of our viewers brought to our attention that there is actually an area in northern Mindanao, in Bukidnon, known as Labona. Not far from Camiguin Island, by the way, which is just north of Mindanao. Did Adam plant some from the garden there as well? Probably. And this one's odd, but we are going to mention it because we mention everything we find pretty much. At the base of Hibik, out in the ocean, is what they call White Island. It's more of a sandbar created by volcanic activity. And we admit, we read somewhere that it has disappearing sands and reforms in different shapes, but pictured on your screen are two of the shapes we found in photos while we were searching. Look at the upper right, the Hebrew letter Kaf. Its script form is a backwards C. Can you see that shape in the background for White Island? And its letter form to the right looks very similar to the shape of White Island to the bottom right. Perhaps this is nothing, but when you note the meaning of the letter kaf is to bend or curve from the shape of a palm, as well as to tame or subdue as one who has been bent to another's will. Does that not have a very coincidental tie to Adam's first sacrifice, where he repented and bent to Yahuah God's will? Again, coincidence perhaps, but awfully odd if so. Let's deal with a few questions. First, would Adam have had a source of drinking water on the Mount of the East if it's on Camiguin Island? He would have to, right? Oh, yes, he did. Actually, Adam would have had options. There are several cold springs nearby, and they have spring water, drinkable. There are hot springs for his coffee, and yes, hibik blend, of course. Kidding, but there is such a blend, and we pictured it in the upper right. And then there are soda springs, which are cold springs with natural carbonation. So Adam may have even had his own version of Coca-Cola, only not as harmful as the one we drink today. We jest, but look at all the water sources. Even hot springs are many times potable, drinkable. Next question. Are there caves on Camiguin Island? We actually researched this a little, and there are no caves open for tourism. However, here's a rather odd application for a cave in the upper right on Camiguin Island, used for the stages of the cross by the Catholic Church. Is this Adam's cave of treasures? Likely not. We have not found that cave yet. It could be hidden, and it could even be underwater. We have started this research for the Mount of the East, actually researching caves first, and just don't see any throughout the Philippines that really tie in name or anything else from that standpoint. But there's so many caves in the Philippines, it's overwhelming, it's amazing. In fact, Adam's cave, assuming the cave of treasures is true, again, maybe underwater. If the Garden of Eden is enclosed, how exactly does it get its light? Remember, the creation story where Yahuah God first says, "Let there be light," and there was light. Did you ever notice he did not actually create the sun, moon, and stars until the fourth day of creation? Where did the light come from then? Yahuah God is light, and Yahushua, Jesus, even referred to himself as the light of the world. With Yahuah God's presence in his Holy of Holies in the Garden of Eden, there is incredible light. What about the Mount of the East being a volcano? Is that a problem? We don't believe so. The lava would come from under the garden and make its way to the top, where it did in fact erupt in 1948. Yes, we said 1948. And the next video, The Mount of the East Speaks, is going to address that eruption as well as all of the eruptions, and they are very significant. This is really cool information. You're going to love that video. Can Enoch breathe underwater? How about that? We had that from a few people, and a fair question actually. But no, not likely. Enoch is human, no doubt. Still alive, but still human. However, we may be ignoring something huge with this question. The garden was preserved during the flood, as there is no reference in all of the Bible that it was destroyed. But there is a reference that Enoch would be in the garden until the day of judgment. We believe that is the final judgment, which is to come. But how could it survive the flood? Do you have any idea what two cherubim angels can do with a flaming sword that turns in all directions? Could it hold back the flood waters from the only entrance to the Garden of Eden? We believe so. That sounds reasonable. Remember, Enoch is not the only inhabitant of the garden. Yahuah God's presence is there. And why the Philippines for all of this? We hear that question from time to time. Why does it have to be Ophir, Sheba, Tarshish, Havilah, Elda, the land of creation, and the Garden of Eden? I mean, why do you got to make it all of those things? Well, we didn't make it any of those things. And why not share with other countries some of these titles? We didn't do it. Because we are not the ones who gave these directions. Noah was. We didn't build the garden. Yahuah God did. Nor did we find Ophir. The Bible did. In fact, Spanish explorers did. And Adam chose to live on the Mount of the East because it was one of Yahuah God's holy places on earth. We didn't make any of this up, nor have we forced anything. The Philippines is what it is. Let's review quickly a few of the resources abundant in the Philippines, some just discovered in recent times, which further expound on why this land is so significant and fits the Garden of Eden narrative. We know and have well established the Philippines has been the most abundant source of gold on the planet in all of history. But what about other resources? Then what about Ham's territory being to the right of the garden? Camiguin Island is closer to the eastern edge of the Philippines. No, Noah would not have divided Mindanao, Samar, and Leyte in half. He was referring to the location of the ancient Pisan River as the border. And he sets it to the south, but also to the east, with the mountains of fire in Indonesia. The Philippines' proven oil deposits currently stand at 138 million barrels. The country's rate of extraction is 25,000 barrels a day, which is far below the consumption. Recent discovery of deep water oil resources has encouraged greater production of oil, but it is still not enough to meet the country's petroleum needs without imports. That is, unless they develop alternative fuels, of course, and in fact, you can even run a car on water. Natural gas deposits in the Philippines are located offshore, above the country's deep sea oil reserves. The Philippines possesses 3.9 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves. Although extraction only began in 2000, production has been able to meet demand every year without imports. Even larger natural gas deposits may be held in another offshore location. I believe that's referring to the Ben Bryce, which has many resources still being uncovered. The Philippines could be one of the richest countries in Asia. That's not our words, that's the article. Following the discovery of the world's biggest palladium reserve off the coasts of Negros, Panay, Mindoro, and Romblon Islands south of Luzon. NASA, together with USGS, United States Geological Survey, released a 3-year study report detailing the 8,450 square kilometer palladium deposits lying below the seas of Visayan, Sibuyan, and Tablas Strait. Current biggest producers of palladium is Russia, with 44%, followed by Africa with 40%, and the rest are from Canada and the U.S. USGS estimated that the whole deposit is 2% bigger than that of Russia, with a total volume of around 3.8 metric tons. Aside from the discovery of palladium, other mineral related to palladium, such as nickel, platinum, aluminum, silver, and gold, are also expected to be extracted from the main mineral. And platinum deposits, not to be confused with palladium, have been found in Zambales, Samar Islands, and Cebu. The common use is for catalytic converters in automobiles, jewelry, hard disks, etc. One of the most valuable metals in our industry today because it is widely used in different industries. Almost 70% of palladium production is used by the jewelry industry and the catalytic industry. And these are mining maps of current activity, major discoveries, other projects, operating mines, pipeline projects, and potential areas and deposits. You can pause the screen to really take a good look at these. We're going to move on. But in other words, the resources are all over the Philippines, basically, especially surrounding the Garden of Eden. And let us not forget the Philippines is the center of marine biodiversity on the planet, surpassing even the Great Barrier Reef, which indicates this is where the origin of man and life in general started. Mount Hibik, also known as Mount Caterman, the Mount of the East, where Yahuah God's fourth holy place on earth is housed, in and just above the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. Because man has fallen and struggles, but will rise and be redeemed by the Messiah, whose work is not complete quite yet as he builds New Jerusalem for us now, and he will resurrect every person who ever lived in one day, coming soon. Surprised? We listened to all of the input of our viewers and extended our research to include it. In the end, we have no connection to Camiguin Island necessarily, and none of us have ever been there, but the trail of evidence leads there. There is so much more we could have added to this video, so much more to know, but we promised we would provide a coherent theory as to the location of the Mount of the East and the shape of the Garden of Eden, and we did. In our next video, in Solomon's Gold series, we are going to explore the island of Camiguin more and provide details on eruptions that have occurred, especially of Hibik, and you will be amazed what we have found. Every time we open another door on this topic, the floodgates open, and we are thankful to Yahuah God, and we are thankful for your support. Thank you for watching our Solomon's Gold series. Please share this video with others and subscribe to our YouTube channel and view our website at thegodculture.com. If you subscribe and are not getting notified by YouTube, as it seems most do, but have heard from a few who are not, please send us an email at thegodculture@gmail.com, and we will notify you ourselves as we upload. Always remember, also you can go to our Facebook, and we always update that as well when we upload. Always remember to prove all things for yourself. Yahuah God bless.
you.